Jiho Kim stepped off the transport shuttle and looked around at the massive university campus. Strange buildings made of crystal and metal reached up toward three different colored suns. Flying vehicles moved silently through the air above him. Students of dozens of different species walked along the pathways, chattering in languages he had never heard before. This was Nexus Prime University, the most famous school in the galaxy, and Jiho was the first human ever to attend. He pulled his bag over his shoulder and walked toward the main building. Other students stopped talking when they saw him. Some pointed and whispered to their friends. A few even moved away from the path when he got close. Jiho tried not to feel hurt by their reactions. He knew why they acted this way. Earth was listed as a Class X hazard world in all the galactic databases. Most aliens thought humans were dangerous monsters who lived on a planet full of death and violence. The truth was more complicated, but Jiho understood their fear. A tall, thin creature, made of what looked like living crystal, approached him. It had no face that Jiho could see, but somehow he knew it was looking at him. "You must be the human student," the creature said in perfect English. Its voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I am Professor Veltar. Welcome to our Xenobiology program." "Thank you, Professor," Jiho said, bowing slightly the way his mother had taught him. "I'm honored to be here." Professor Veltar seemed pleased by his politeness. "Come. Let me show you to your first class. You will be studying with some of our brightest students." They walked through the campus together. Professor Veltar pointed out different buildings and explained how the university worked. Students from all over the galaxy came here to learn about other species and cultures. Most stayed with their own kind, but the Xenobiology program mixed different species together. It helps them understand each other better, Professor Veltar explained. "Though I admit, we have never had a student from a death world before. This will be interesting for everyone." The Xenobiology laboratory was huge and filled with strange equipment. About 20 students sat at curved desks arranged in a circle. When Jiho walked in, the room went completely silent. Most of the students looked like different types of animals from Earth, but with obvious intelligence in their eyes. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4. A few even floated in the air using unknown technology. "Class, I would like you to meet Jiho," Professor Veltar announced. "He will be joining us from Earth." A small creature that looked like a mix between a rabbit and a deer raised its hand. It had large, gentle eyes and fur that seemed to glow with soft light. "Professor, is it safe to have a Deathworlder in class with us?" the creature asked in a voice barely above a whisper. Professor Veltar's crystal body made a sound like laughing. "Minho, you will be Jiho's study partner. I think you will find that your fears are unnecessary." Minho looked terrified at this news. Other students around him placed their hands on his shoulders to comfort him. Jiho felt a stab of sadness. He had hoped things would be different here. On Earth, he was just a normal college student who loved biology and wanted to learn about life on other planets. Here, he was seen as a monster. He took the empty seat next to Minho, moving slowly so he would not frighten the small alien. "Hello," he said quietly. "I promise I won't hurt you." Minho nodded but did not look at him directly. A larger student sitting across from them spoke up. This one looked like a big cat, but with longer arms and intelligent green eyes. "I am Yuna," she said with confidence. "I come from the hunting worlds. I am not afraid of you, human." "I'm glad," Jiho replied. I hope we can be friends. Yuna's eyes narrowed. We will see. I have heard stories about Deathworlders. They say your planet is so dangerous that you had to become predators just to survive. Before Jiho could answer, another student joined the conversation. This one looked like he lived in water, with smooth skin that stayed wet even in the air. I am Jiho, the aquatic student said. I study behavior patterns of different species. I am very curious about how humans act. Do you really come from a world where everything tries to kill you? Jiho thought about how to answer. Earth can be dangerous, he said carefully. But it's also very beautiful. Most creatures there just want to live their lives like anywhere else. Professor Veltar called for attention before anyone could ask more questions. Today we will discuss predator and prey relationships, the professor announced. How different species survive when they must share space with those who might hunt them. The lesson was fascinating. Professor Veltar showed examples from worlds all across the galaxy. Some planets had creatures that hunted in packs. Others had solitary predators that relied on ambush tactics. Many worlds had developed complex systems where predators and prey lived in careful balance. Most civilized species come from worlds where the predators were not too dangerous. Professor Veltar explained. This allowed them to develop culture and technology without constantly fighting for survival. Yuna raised her hand. What about species like mine? We evolved from hunters. Excellent question, the professor replied. Predator species often make good explorers and defenders, but they usually come from worlds where hunting was challenging but not deadly. They learned to be careful and smart. Jiho noticed that several students glanced at him during this explanation. He could almost see them thinking about Earth and wondering what kind of world could produce humans. As the class continued, Professor Veltar's crystal body seemed to grow brighter with excitement. Tomorrow, we will have a special demonstration, the professor announced. I have arranged for us to observe a live shadow maw from the Crimson Sector. The reaction was immediate. Several students made sounds of fear. Minho actually fell off his chair. Even Yuna's confident expression changed to one of worry. Professor, is that wise? Jiho asked, his wet skin turning darker with stress. Shadow maws are apex predators. Just being near one can cause psychological trauma. Do not worry, Professor Veltar assured them. It will be behind multiple energy barriers. You will be completely safe. This is a rare opportunity to observe one of the galaxy's most perfect killing machines. The professor looked directly at Jiho. I am especially curious to see how our Deathworld student reacts to meeting a true predator. Around the room, students began whispering to each other. Jiho heard fragments of their conversations. Many were placing bets on how quickly he would run away or faint from fear. As class ended, Minho finally looked directly at Jiho for the first time. His large eyes were full of worry. You should not come tomorrow, Minho said quietly. Shadow maws are very dangerous. Even seeing one can hurt your mind. I do not want you to be hurt. Jiho smiled at the small alien's concern. Despite his fear, Minho was trying to protect him. Thank you for caring, Jiho said. But I think I'll be okay. Walking back to his dormitory, Jiho thought about tomorrow's demonstration. He had never heard of a shadow maw before, but he was curious rather than afraid. Growing up on Earth had taught him that most creatures, no matter how dangerous they looked, had reasons for their behavior. He had no idea that tomorrow would change everything. The next morning, Jiho arrived at the Xenobiology laboratory to find it completely transformed. Thick metal walls had been installed around a central area. Energy barriers hummed with power, creating a shimmering wall of force. Warning signs in dozens of languages covered every surface. Most of his classmates were already there, but they had all moved their chairs as far back as possible. Some were wearing protective gear. Others held small devices that Jiho guessed were meant to calm their nerves. Minho waved him over to a corner where he had set up what looked like a small fort made of desks. "Jiho, I saved you a safe spot," the rabbit-like alien said. "We can hide behind these barriers if the creature escapes." "Thank you," Jiho said. But he did not move toward the makeshift shelter. Instead, he walked to the front row and sat down close to the containment area. The other students stared at him in shock. Even Yuna, who had claimed not to be afraid of him, was sitting near the back of the room. "Human!" Deho called out from where he floated in a tank of water. "You should move back. Shadow Maws project fear directly into the minds of other creatures. The closer you are, the stronger the effect." Jiho looked around the room at his frightened classmates. "Have any of you actually seen a Shadow Maw before?" They all shook their heads. Everything they knew came from stories and videos. Professor Veltar entered the room carrying a large device covered in blinking lights. "Good morning, class. Today you will witness one of nature's most perfect predators. The Shadow Maw has evolved over millions of years to become the ultimate hunter." The professor activated several more energy barriers and checked each one twice. "These creatures are from a world where survival requires constant vigilance. They can sense fear from great distances and use it as a weapon." "Professor," a student near the back called out, "why is the human sitting so close? Should we not warn him about the psychological effects?" Professor Veltar looked at Jiho with what seemed like curiosity. "That is an excellent point. Jiho, perhaps you should move back with the others. We do not know how a Deathworld mind will react to a Shadow Maw's fear projection." "I'll be fine here," Jiho said calmly. "I want to get a good look at it." Several students made sounds of disbelief. One even started crying and had to be comforted by friends. The transport container arrived with a sound like thunder. It was massive, made of the same energy-resistant metal as warship hulls. Robotic arms carefully moved it into the containment area while everyone watched in tense silence. Professor Veltar activated the final barrier and stepped back. "I will now release the Shadow Maw. Everyone remain calm and observe its behavior." The container opened with a hiss of escaping gas. The reaction from the students was immediate and dramatic. Half of them screamed. Several fainted on the spot. Others tried to run from the room but found their legs would not work. Even Yuna, the proud predator, fell backward off her chair and crawled away on her hands and knees. The Shadow Maw that emerged was unlike anything Jiho had ever seen. It stood 12 feet tall on 4 powerful legs. Its body was covered in dark scales that seemed to absorb light. 6 eyes glowed red along its elongated head. When it opened its mouth, rows of teeth like curved daggers became visible. But what made it truly terrifying was not what could be seen. The creature projected pure, primal fear into the minds of everyone around it. This was not just an animal. It was nightmare, made real. The Shadow Maw looked around the room, studying the cowering aliens with intelligent malice. Then its 6 eyes focused on the front row, where one small figure sat calmly in his chair. Jiho found himself looking directly into the face of what the galaxy considered an unstoppable killing machine. He waited for the fear to hit him, for his mind to be overwhelmed by the creature's psychic attack. Instead, he felt curious. The Shadow Maw was definitely impressive. Its muscle structure suggested incredible speed and power, the way it held. Its head indicated excellent hearing and smell. Those 6 eyes probably gave it amazing depth perception for hunting. But Jiho had grown up watching nature documentaries about Earth's predators. He had seen great white sharks breach the water to catch seals. He had watched polar bears hunt across frozen wastelands. He had observed saltwater crocodiles that could snap a buffalo in half. This creature was dangerous, certainly. But it was still just an animal trying to survive. The Shadow Maw seemed confused by Jiho's lack of fear. It moved closer to the energy barrier, pressing its massive head against the force field. Its eyes stared directly into Jiho's, trying to project terror into his mind. Jiho pulled out his notebook and began writing observations. "Interesting hunting posture," he said to himself. "Looks like it relies on psychological warfare to weaken prey before attacking." Behind him, he could hear Professor Veltar making sounds of amazement. "Impossible," the crystal being whispered. "The fear projection should be overwhelming him." The Shadow Maw became more agitated when its psychic attack failed. It roared, a sound that made the energy barriers flicker and caused 3 more students to faint. Then it began pacing back and forth, never taking its eyes off the strange creature that would not fear it. Jiho stood up and walked even closer to the barrier. The Shadow Maw reared back on its hind legs, towering over him. Its claws scraped against the energy field, creating sparks of light. "You're magnificent," Jiho said quietly, looking up at the massive predator. "I bet you're the top of the food chain on your world." The Shadow Maw paused in its display of aggression. It tilted its head, studying this odd being that spoke to it without terror. "Jiho!" Minho called from his hiding place. "Please move away! It's going to break through!" But Jiho remained calm. He had noticed something important. Despite its fearsome appearance and psychic abilities, the Shadow Maw was showing signs of stress. Its breathing was rapid. Its movements had the desperate quality of a trapped animal. "Professor," Jiho called back without turning around. "How long has this creature been in captivity?" "Several months," Professor Veltar replied, sounding shaken. "It was captured for research purposes." "It's scared," Jiho said, surprising everyone in the room. "Look at its body language. This isn't hunting behavior, it's defensive. It's trying to make itself seem more dangerous because it feels trapped." The other students slowly began to emerge from their hiding places, though they stayed far from the barrier. They watched in amazement as Jiho continued to observe the Shadow Maw without any sign of fear. "How are you doing that?" Yuna asked, her voice shaking. "I can barely look at it without my mind going blank with terror." Jiho finally turned away from the Shadow Maw to look at his classmates. Their faces showed a mixture of awe and confusion. Even Professor Veltar seemed stunned by what had just happened. "On Earth, we have creatures just as dangerous," Jiho explained simply. "Tigers that can break your neck with one bite. Bears that can run faster than a horse and smell you from miles away. Sharks that have been perfect killing machines for millions of years." He looked back at the Shadow Maw, which had calmed down, and was now watching him with what seemed like curiosity. "The difference is, humans learned to live alongside these predators. We studied them, understood them, and found ways to coexist. This Shadow Maw reminds me of a Siberian tiger I once saw at a wildlife preserve." The room was completely silent, except for the humming of the energy barriers. "You're not afraid," Jiho said, his voice filled with wonder. A creature that can drive entire armies insane with fear, and you're not afraid. Jiho shrugged. It's just an animal doing what animals do. Why would I be afraid of that? Professor Veltar's crystal body was flickering with rapid changes of light, apparently the equivalent of excited thinking. This changes everything we thought we knew about Deathworlders, the professor said quietly. The Shadow Maw had settled down and was now lying at the edge of the barrier closest to Jiho. Its 6 eyes remained fixed on him, but its posture was no longer aggressive. I think it likes you, Minho said in amazement, finally leaving his hiding place to join the others. As the class ended and the Shadow Maw was returned to its container, students gathered around Jiho with dozens of questions. But the most important question came from Professor Veltar. Jiho, the professor said, would you be willing to tell us more about Earth's predators? I think we have much to learn about your world. Jiho smiled. I'd be happy to share what I know. He had no idea that his calm reaction to the Shadow Maw had already begun spreading through the university's communication networks, reaching alien species across the galaxy. Word traveled fast through Nexus Prime University. By the time Jiho reached the cafeteria for lunch, students from dozens of different species were staring at him. Some pointed and whispered to their friends. Others followed him at a safe distance, trying to get a better look at the human who had not feared the Shadow Maw. Jiho picked up his meal, synthesized proteins that tasted almost like chicken, and looked for somewhere to sit. Most tables became empty as soon as he approached them. Finally, he found Minho sitting alone in a corner, nervously picking at his food. May I join you? Jiho asked. Minho looked up with surprise. You want to sit with me? But I am just a prey species from a peaceful world. You could sit with anyone? You're my study partner, Jiho said, setting down his tray. Besides, you tried to protect me yesterday. That was brave. As Jiho ate, more students began gathering around their table. First came Daiho floating in, his mobility tank. Then Yuna approached, moving cautiously but with determination. Soon they were surrounded by curious aliens, all keeping a respectful distance. Is it true? Asked a student that looked like a walking flower. Did you really stare down a Shadow Maw without blinking? I wouldn't say I stared it down, Jiho replied. I just watched it. It was interesting. Interesting, Yuna repeated. That creature could have driven you insane with fear. How can you call it interesting? Jiho pulled out his personal data pad and activated a holographic display. Let me show you something. The hologram showed a massive tiger walking through snow-covered forest. Its orange and black stripes stood out against the white landscape. The big cat moved with perfect grace and power. This is a Siberian tiger from Earth, Jiho explained. It weighs about 600 pounds and can leap 30 feet. Its bite force is strong enough to crush bones. The alien students leaned closer, fascinated, despite their nervousness. Now watch this, Jiho said, changing the image. The new hologram showed a human researcher sitting calmly just 10 feet away from the same tiger. The big cat was lying in the sun, completely relaxed. Neither the human nor the tiger seemed concerned about the other. Impossible, breathed a student that looked like a large insect. How can they be so close? Why isn't the human running? Because the human understands the tiger, Jiho explained. He knows when it's dangerous and when it's safe. He respects the tiger's space and behavior. Minho raised his hand timidly. But surely tigers are not the most dangerous creatures on your world? Jiho smiled and changed the hologram again. This time it showed a great white shark, its massive jaws filled with rows of sharp teeth. The alien students gasped and some moved back from the table. "This is a great white shark," Jiho said. "They can grow up to 20 feet long and have been the perfect predator for 400 million years. Their bite force is 3 times stronger than a tiger's." The next image showed human divers swimming alongside the shark in a protective cage, and another image appeared, is humans swimming with them without any protection at all. The hologram now showed free divers swimming next to several great whites. The sharks swam peacefully around the humans, showing no signs of aggression. Dead silence fell over the gathered students. "That cannot be real," Yuna said, her voice barely a whisper. "No intelligent species would voluntarily enter the water. With such creatures?" "Oh, but we do," Jiho said cheerfully. He brought up more images. "We surf in waters where sharks hunt. We dive to study them. Some humans even work to protect sharks from other humans who want to harm them." Deho's tank was bubbling with excitement. "Fascinating! Your species has completely different threat assessment patterns than any we have studied. Show us more." Jiho was happy to share. He showed them polar bears that could smell food from 20 miles away and run 40 miles per hour. He showed them salt water, crocodiles that had barely changed since the time of dinosaurs. He showed them poison dart frogs tiny enough to sit on a fingertip, but deadly enough to kill an elephant. "And humans live alongside all of these?" asked the flower-like student. "We don't just live alongside them," Jiho said. "We study them, protect them, and learn from them. Some of our greatest discoveries came from watching how animals survive." He showed them images of human researchers tracking wolves in the wild, tagging whales in the ocean, and living among gorillas in the jungle. "This is Dr. Jane Goodall," Jiho said, displaying an image of an elderly human woman sitting peacefully while chimpanzees groomed her hair. "She spent her life learning about our closest animal relatives. They accepted her as part of their family." "Your species is insane," Yuna said, but there was admiration in her voice. "Magnificently insane. We prefer to think of ourselves as curious," Jiho replied with a laugh. A new student approached the group, one Jiho had not seen before. This alien was larger than the others, with thick armor plating and claws that looked designed for combat. "I am Kyung from the warrior worlds," the armored alien announced. "I have heard impossible stories about this human. Tell me, soft skin, what is the most dangerous creature on your world?" Jiho thought for a moment. "That's a hard question. Dangerous in what way?" "The most deadly. The one that kills the most of your kind." "Oh, that's easy," Jiho said. "Mosquitoes." The alien students looked confused. Jiho brought up an image of a tiny insect. "Mosquitoes?" Kyung repeated. "These small flying creatures?" "They carry diseases that have killed more humans than all the tigers, sharks, and bears combined," Jiho explained. "Malaria, yellow fever, dengue, these little insects have shaped human history." "And how do humans fight back against such a deadly enemy?" Kyung asked. "Bed nets, medicine, and habitat management," Jiho said. "We also use genetic engineering to create mosquitoes that cannot carry diseases." The alien students were quiet for a long moment, processing this information. "Let me understand," Deho said slowly. "Your most dangerous predator is a creature smaller than my smallest appendage, and you fight it with science?" "Pretty much, yes." "But what about the large predators?" Minho asked. "How do humans become strong enough to face them?" Jiho's expression became more serious. "We didn't become strong through size or claws or armor," he said. "We became strong through cooperation, intelligence, and endurance." He showed them images of early humans hunting woolly mammoths with nothing but wooden spears and stone tools. "Our ancestors hunted creatures 10 times their size by working together and never giving up. They would follow a mammoth for days, wearing it down until it was too tired to fight back." "Persistence hunting," Yuna said with recognition. "I have heard of this strategy, but I thought it was just a theory." "Humans are the galaxy's most successful persistence hunters," Jiho confirmed. "We can run farther than almost any other species. We cool ourselves by sweating, which lets us keep going when other creatures have to stop to rest." He showed them videos of human marathon runners, explaining how humans could run for hours without stopping. "On Earth, we have a saying," Jiho continued. "It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. Humans survived not because we were the biggest or strongest, but because we never gave up." Professor Veltar appeared at the edge of the crowd that had gathered around Jiho's table. The crystal being had been listening for several minutes. "Students," the professor announced, "I believe we need to completely revise our understanding of Deathworld species. This human has given us more insights in one afternoon than we have gained in centuries of study." The professor's crystal body flickered with excitement. "Jiho, would you be willing to give a presentation to the entire Xenobiology department? I believe the faculty needs to hear these stories from Earth." "Of course," Jiho said. "I'm happy to share what I know." As the crowd of students began to disperse, Minho remained at the table with Jiho. "I owe you an apology," the small alien said quietly. "I thought you were dangerous because you came from a death world, but you are the kindest person I have met here." "Thank you, Minho," Jiho replied. "But remember, I am dangerous. All humans are. The difference is that we choose how to use that danger. We can use it to protect instead of to harm." That evening, as Jiho walked back to his dormitory, he noticed something had changed. Students no longer avoided him in the hallways. Instead, they nodded respectfully as he passed. Some even smiled. Word of the human who befriended predators was spreading beyond the university. Across the galaxy, alien species were beginning to wonder what other surprises Earth might hold. And in his room that night, Jiho received a message from Earth's embassy. They wanted to know if he would be interested in becoming the first human ambassador to the Galactic Council. The universe, it seemed, was ready to learn what humans really were. 3 days after Jiho's presentation to the Xenobiology faculty, Professor Veltar announced a special field exercise. The university's survival simulation chamber would test how different species work together under stress. "This will help us understand how various evolutionary backgrounds affect cooperation," the professor explained as the class gathered outside the massive dome-shaped building. "You will work in teams to navigate challenging environments." Jiho found himself grouped with Minho, Yuna, Deho, and 2 new students. Taehyun, a bird-like species with excellent eyesight, and Suyung, a rock-like being from a high-gravity world. The simulation chamber was enormous inside, with technology that could create any environment imaginable. Mountains, forests, deserts, and alien landscapes could all be generated with perfect realism. "Today's scenario is a crashed ship on a hostile world," Professor Veltar announced over the communication system. "Your goal is to reach the rescue beacon while avoiding the local predators. Work together and stay safe." The chamber transformed around them. They stood in a dense jungle with strange purple trees reaching toward an orange sky. The air was thick and humid, filled with the sounds of unseen creatures moving through the undergrowth. "Sensors show multiple life forms moving toward your location," the professor's voice continued. "Some are curious, others are hunting. You have 2 hours to reach the beacon, which is 5 kilometers away." Tae-hyun immediately took to the air, scouting ahead with his sharp eyes. "I can see a clear path through the valley," he called down. "But there are large shapes moving in the shadows." The team began moving carefully through the jungle. Minho stayed close to Jiho, his large ears constantly twitching at every sound. Yuna took point position, her predator instincts keeping watch for threats. Daeho used his water tank's mobility to scout the sides, while Soo-young's heavy footsteps crushed a path through the undergrowth. For the first kilometer, everything went smoothly. Then the first predator appeared. It emerged from the purple foliage without warning, a creature like a cross between a wolf and a lizard, with 6 legs and teeth designed for tearing flesh. Its eyes locked onto the group, especially focusing on Minho as the most obvious prey. The alien student's reactions were immediate and predictable. Minho froze in terror, his prey instincts telling him not to move. Yuna crouched low, preparing to fight, but clearly outmatched by the larger predator. Tae-hyun flew higher, calling out warnings. Daeho's tank began backing away while Soo-young slowly turned to face the threat. The wolf lizard took a step forward, testing the group's defenses. That was when Jiho's Deathworld instincts kicked in. Without thinking, he moved between the predator and his teammates. His posture changed completely, from relaxed student to something that even Yuna recognized as dangerous. His eyes never left the creature's face, while his hands picked up a fallen branch and tested its weight. "Back away slowly," Jiho said quietly. To his team, his voice calm but carrying absolute authority. "No sudden movements. Tae-hyun, find us an alternate route." The wolf lizard seemed confused by this response. It had expected fear, flight, or clumsy attempts at fighting. Instead, it faced a creature that showed no fear and moved with the confidence of an apex predator. Jiho took a step forward, making himself appear larger. He struck the branch against a tree, creating a loud crack that made the predator flinch. "Go on," Jiho said firmly to the creature. "You don't want this fight." The wolf lizard stared at him for a long moment, then turned and disappeared back into the jungle. It had decided these were not prey worth the risk. "How did you do that?" Minho whispered in amazement. "Confidence," Jiho replied, leading them forward. "Most predators don't want a fair fight. They want easy prey. Act like you're not easy prey, and they usually look elsewhere." The team moved faster now, but they were not done with challenges. The second encounter came when they reached a river crossing. The water looked safe, but Daeho's sensors detected movement underneath. "Aquatic predators," he reported. "At least 3 of them, each about my size." This time, Jiho did not hesitate. He found several large rocks and began throwing them into the water upstream from where they needed to cross. "What are you doing?" Yuna asked. "Creating a distraction," Jiho explained, continuing to throw rocks. "The splashing will draw their attention away from the crossing point." Sure enough, the water creatures moved toward the disturbance. Jiho quickly led his team across the river at the quietest spot he could find. "That was brilliant," Tae-hyun said as they reached the other side safely. But the most dangerous encounter was yet to come. As they approached the final kilometer to the rescue beacon, multiple predators surrounded them. The simulation had detected their success so far and increased the difficulty. 6 different creatures emerged from the jungle. The wolf lizard from before, plus several new threats including something that looked like a giant spider and a flying creature with razor-sharp claws. The alien students huddled together in panic. Even Yuna, despite her predator heritage, was overwhelmed by facing so many threats at once. Jiho's mind shifted into what his instructors back on Earth had called tactical mode. His Deathworld evolution took over completely. He quickly assessed the terrain, the threats, and his team's capabilities. Then he began moving with a speed and precision that amazed his alien classmates. "Suyung, use your mask to block the path behind us," he commanded. "Deho, spray water to confuse their scent tracking. Taehyun, stay high and call out their movements. Yuna, watch our right flank. Minho, stay in the center and be ready to run when I say." Jiho picked up several rocks and threw them with deadly accuracy, striking the spider creature in its eyes and causing it to retreat. He used a long branch to keep the flying predator at bay while positioning his team for a fighting retreat. But what impressed the aliens most was not his combat skills. It was his leadership. Under pressure, the human became something they had never seen before. He was calm, decisive, and completely focused on protecting his team. "Move now!" Jiho called out, leading them through a gap in the predator circle. He stayed at the rear, using improvised tools and tactical positioning to keep the creatures from following too closely. When one got too near to Minho, Jiho threw a rock that struck it precisely between the eyes, sending it tumbling. The team reached the rescue beacon with 15 minutes to spare. As the simulation ended and the jungle faded away, they found themselves back in the White Chamber with Professor Veltar and several other faculty members watching from the observation deck. The alien students looked at Jiho with new respect and a touch of awe. "That was incredible," Yuna said, her voice filled with admiration. "You were not just fighting, you were thinking several steps ahead the entire time." "Where did you learn to do that?" Deho asked. Jiho shrugged, already returning to his normal, calm demeanor. "Earth teaches you to think fast or die young. Humans have been dealing with multiple predators for millions of years. We learned to use tools, terrain, and teamwork to survive." Professor Veltar's crystal body was flickering rapidly, a sign of extreme excitement. The professor activated the communication system. "Students, you have just witnessed something remarkable," the professor announced. "In 40 years of running this simulation, we have never seen a team successfully navigate that final scenario. The difficulty level was designed to be impossible. The other faculty members were already reviewing the recorded data, studying Jiho's actions frame by frame. The human's tactical assessment was flawless," one professor noted. "He identified each team member's strengths and used them perfectly." "His improvised tool use was exceptional," added another. "He turned environmental factors into weapons and shields." But Minho had noticed something else. "Jiho," he said quietly, "you were scared too, weren't you?" Jiho nodded. "Terrified. But being scared doesn't mean you can't act. Fear can make you more careful, more aware. The trick is not letting it control you." As they left the simulation chamber, Suyung spoke for the first time that day. His species rarely talked, communicating mostly through rock vibrations. "Human Jiho," he said in a voice like grinding stone. "My people have a saying. The mountain does not fear the storm, but the storm fears the mountain. Today, you were the mountain." That evening, news of the simulation spread throughout the university, and beyond. The impossible scenario had been conquered by a human who used intelligence, teamwork, and Deathworld instincts to protect his alien teammates. In the galactic communication networks, military strategists began asking questions about human tactical abilities. Diplomatic corps started wondering if they had misunderstood Earth's potential value to the galactic community. And in his dormitory room, Jiho received another message from Earth's embassy. This time, they were not just asking about ambassadorial positions. They wanted to know if he would consider helping to establish the first Human Defense Corps, a peacekeeping force that could protect other species from threats they could not handle themselves. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humans were not just survivors from a death world. They were protectors. The news spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within a week of the simulation exercise, every major species had heard about the human student who had led his alien teammates through an impossible survival scenario. The story grew with each telling, but the core facts remained the same. A Deathworlder had used his abilities not to dominate, but to protect. Jiho found himself at the center of galactic attention in a way that made him deeply uncomfortable. News crews from dozens of worlds requested interviews. Military leaders wanted to study human tactics. Scientists demanded access to Earth's biological data. But the most important visitor came quietly, without fanfare. Ambassador Rethkai of the Galactic Council arrived at Nexus Prime University on a simple transport, accompanied only by a small, diplomatic staff. She was an elegant being from one of the galaxy's oldest civilizations, with flowing tentacles that changed color based on her emotions. "I have come to speak with the human," she announced to Professor Veltar. "The Council has questions that need answers." Jiho met with the ambassador in the university's formal conference room. His alien classmates waited nervously outside, worried that their friend might be in trouble with the galactic government. "Sit, please," Ambassador Rethkai said, her tentacles showing calm blue colors. "I am not here to judge or punish. I am here to understand." She activated a holographic display showing Earth's classification in the galactic database. The planet was still listed as Class X, Prohibited Death World, Extreme Hazard to All Life. "Tell me," the ambassador said, "is this classification accurate?" Jiho thought carefully before answering. "Earth is dangerous," he said honestly, "but not in the way most people think." "Explain." "The danger isn't that Earth wants to hurt anyone," Jiho continued. "The danger is that Earth made us too good at surviving. We adapt to anything. We protect what we care about. We never give up. Those traits can be threatening to species that aren't used to them." Ambassador Rethkai's tentacles shifted to interested purple. "Your performance in the simulation chamber suggests you see your teammates as worth protecting, even at personal risk?" "Of course," Jiho said, surprised by the question. "They're my friends, even though they are not human. Even though their species might compete with yours for resources?" Jiho looked confused. "Why would that matter? Friendship isn't about species, it's about caring for each other." The ambassador was quiet for a long moment, her tentacles cycling through several colors as she processed this response. "The Galactic Council has been afraid of Earth for 300 years, she said finally. "Every simulation we ran suggested that humans would be conquerors, aggressive, territorial, dangerous to peaceful species." "Maybe we would have been," Jiho admitted, "if we had been contacted differently, if we had been treated as enemies from the start. And instead, Instead, you gave me the chance to make friends, Jiho said simply. You let me learn about other species and show them what humans are really like. That changes everything. Over the following days, Ambassador Rethkai met with Jiho's classmates, Professor Veltar, and other faculty members. She observed classes, reviewed simulation data, and watched recordings of Jiho's interactions with the Shadow Maw. On her final day at the university, she called a formal assembly. Students and faculty from across the campus gathered in the great auditorium to hear what the Galactic Council's representative had to say. For centuries we have feared the unknown, Ambassador Rethkai began, her tentacles displaying formal gold colors. We classified Earth as a forbidden world because we could not understand how anything good could come from such a dangerous place. She gestured toward Jiho, who sat in the front row with his study group. This human has taught us that we were asking the wrong questions. We asked how dangerous Earth was. We should have asked what Earth's dangers created. The ambassador activated a holographic display showing Earth's new classification, Class A Protected Heritage World, Specialized Evolutionary Development. Earth will no longer be forbidden, she announced. Instead, it will be protected as a treasure of biological diversity. And humans will be invited to join the galactic community as guardians and protectors. The auditorium erupted in cheers from the alien students. Minho was crying tears of joy. Yuna roared with approval. Even So-Young's rocky body was vibrating with excitement. But Ambassador Rethkai was not finished. Furthermore, she continued, the Galactic Council formally requests that Earth establish the Human Protection Corps. Your species' unique abilities make you ideal peacekeepers for situations too dangerous for other species to handle. After the assembly, Jiho found himself surrounded by his classmates and professors. Everyone wanted to congratulate him, thank him, or ask him questions about humanity's future in the galaxy. Professor Veltar approached through the crowd, the crystal being's body glowing brighter than anyone had ever seen. Jiho, the professor said, I have a confession to make. The simulation exercise was not originally designed to be that difficult. Jiho looked confused. What do you mean? I modified it after watching your reaction to the Shadow Maw, Professor Veltar admitted. I wanted to see what a human would do under maximum stress. The scenario was supposed to be impossible to solve. Why? Jiho asked. Because I needed to. No, the professor replied. The galaxy needed to know. Are humans conquerors or protectors? Do they save themselves or do they save others? The professor's crystal body flickered with what Jiho had learned was the equivalent of a smile. You answered that question perfectly. When faced with overwhelming danger, your first instinct was to protect your teammates, even the ones who had feared you. As the celebration continued around them, Minho approached Jiho quietly. I owe you another apology, the small alien said. When you first arrived, I thought you were a monster. Now I know you are the furthest thing from a monster possible. What am I, then? Jiho asked with a smile. You are exactly what this galaxy needs, Minho replied. Someone strong enough to face any danger, but kind enough to use that strength for others. 3 months later, Jiho stood on the bridge of the first Human Protection Corps ship, watching as Earth's defense fleet took its place among the galactic peacekeeping forces. The ship was crewed by humans and aliens working together, sharing knowledge and protecting worlds that could not protect themselves. The communication system activated with an emergency signal from a distant system. A peaceful civilization was under attack by space pirates, and their own defenses were overwhelmed. Captain Kim, the communications officer, reported, the gentlefolk of Harmony 7 are requesting immediate assistance. Their world is under assault. Jiho looked around the bridge at his mixed crew, humans and aliens working as one team. His study group from university was there too. Minho served as the cultural liaison, helping them understand alien species they encountered. Yuna had become an excellent tactical officer. Daiho managed communications across multiple species. Even Su Yung had joined them as chief engineer, his rocky strength perfect for ship repairs. "Set course for Harmony 7, Captain Kim ordered. Maximum speed. As the ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, Jiho reflected on how much had changed since that first day in Xenobiology class. He had come to university just wanting to learn about alien life. Instead, he had helped two civilizations, human and galactic, learn about each other. The universe was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of friends worth protecting. And as Earth's children took their place among the stars, they brought with them the most important lesson their Deathworld had taught them. True strength was not about being the most dangerous predator. True strength was about using your power to protect those who could not protect themselves. The human age of the galaxy had begun, and it would be an age of guardians, not conquerors. Behind them, Earth turned slowly in space, its blue oceans and green continents beautiful and peaceful. It looked nothing like the terrifying death world the galaxy had feared for so long. But then again, the most dangerous things often looked harmless from a distance. The difference was that now the galaxy understood. Earth's children were dangerous only to those who threatened the innocent, and that made all the difference in the universe.